All right, so any questions first of all? Good, week 2, we're all totally lost. All right. Or maybe everything's been all clear. Okay, so couple of things today. So we're gonna do some more EC2 stuff. We're gonna do a little bit more kind of intro to Linux command shell. I hope to get to also starting up a Windows server in EC2, bunch of stuff. All right, so back in EC2, how many people do not yet have their Amazon accounts? Okay, try to get that done because there's going to be an assignment very, very soon.
Yeah, the brightness is flickering. Can you keep it constant?
Sorry?
The brightness of the screen is flickering. Can you keep it constant?
I don't know that I have a control over that. All right, so EC2. Right, so I'm gonna so I'll do the launch instance like we did in the past, and I'll fire up another Ubuntu here. Yep, we'll go with the free tier. That's fine. We'll do our review at launch. Okay, security group. Let's see. Oh hell, I'll just create a new one. Call it in class. All right, so there's SSH, and yes, we'll go from my IP address, like so, and yeah, maybe I probably also do want an HTTP because I want to look at that. Okay, so that's good there. Instance details. Yes, I only want one. I'll use, right, so I'm going to use the little script that we have for the basic Ubuntu. Tag storage, none of that. Okay, cool. All right, so that's that. Let me, yes, that's the one that I want. Okay, so that's loading up. Recall, we want to make sure to load up your private key. Let me take a look at the instances. So it says it's running already. Okay, let's take a look. All right, so we are up and running in the cloud. Okay, so, and you can see, that's pretty much how fast you can kind of get stuff up and set once you kind of understand this stuff and all of that. All right, so let's kind of do a bit more of a review of the different commands and various things. I think I probably actually forgot a few things and stuff like that. So I think PWD, print the working directory, basically shows the current directory that you're in, right? So I'm logged in as the Ubuntu user, so that's where that's basically notice it's in the home directory and the Ubuntu subdirectory of that. Okay. If I change up to the root of Linux, right? Of course, we have the various typical Linux directories. So of course, there's good old etc, right? That contains lots of goodness. There is var, which let's see. Yes. So notice we do not currently have www because we have not installed the Apache and all of that just yet. So www doesn't exist here just yet. Changing back to your own directory. So there's a couple of ways I could do this. Certainly, I could actually come back to here and say, okay, I want to. Right. We could go back to this here, right? So I could actually do cd/home/Ubuntu, and that will navigate directly to my home directory. Some other ways that I can do this. So the tilde tilde in terms of this actually works out a couple of different ways. So one, I could do tilde Ubuntu. If I had other users on here, which I don't, I could actually change to their directories using that. But tilde also matches directly to your own directory, so I could do just cd tilde and go back to my home directory. Okay. Recall the TAC A flag on ls allows us to see all of the contents of a particular directory, including those things that begin with a dot. Any questions on that sort of stuff? Remember, so ls also, for instance, if I do ls ... basically that is give me that directory. I can do, say, give me a listing of the root directory. It's that. Linux, unlike Windows, does not have, so remember, in Windows, how does Windows know, for instance, something's an executable? Yeah, basically it's exe. In fact, the way Windows kind of knows that any file is anything is based essentially on its file extension. Right now, is it possible then to create a text file that has that essentially has a .exe extension? Yeah, absolutely. And then Windows isn't going to be able to deal with that, etc. Under Linux, we don't actually have that. That is, there isn't necessarily a requirement for an executable to be a .exe and so on and so forth. So how do you figure out what thing is what? Okay, and so there's a couple of different ways of playing around with this. So again, let's do ls. TAC A, right? So for instance, I could do file.cache, right? And notice it says, oh, that's actually a directory, right? Which we should have known from the little cyan highlighting, but nevertheless, it does in fact tell me, yeah, that's a directory. How about dir colors? Okay. So .dir colors is an ASCII file, right? And so that means I can certainly do something like this to see what that looks like, or I could actually have lessed it, etc. But you get basically the idea there. Right. So in the bin directory, the /user/bin directory, we have a number of programs. So for instance, I could say file user bin man, right? And there it gives me all kinds of information about that. So file is an incredibly helpful tool within Linux for finding out about the kind of file that you are dealing with. Just do one other quick So here's the long directory listing for the /user/bin folder. Anybody know what this is? Pardon? That's the set of permissions, right? But this particular one with the L on the front, what is that? it's a link, right? So basically, we can have an entry in the directory that links to someplace else. And so when you see these little L's, and you'll notice it actually is sort of pointing out, says, oh, okay, this is setarch, right? There's where that's referring to. So you see these various things where so W is referring to Etsy alternatives W, etc. Right? And so it's very common to have different types of links and so forth. The way that you actually create those is to use the ln command. I'm not going to really talk too much about that, but nevertheless, it is there. All right. So we talked about, basically things like echo, right? So we can use echo for outputting things. We can use that in conjunction with the file redirect for easily creating files or easily editing files and those kinds of things, right? So for instance, I could say something like echo, and then I could do h1. Right, so this is basically just a very simple HTML string, and then I could create the file HTML like so. And so if we cat hi HTML, there it is, right? And it does in fact recognize that that is that. I could copy this. So for instance, I could say cp hi to hello.html, and now I have my copies. Renaming. So mv move is for renaming the particular file or folder. So just do something like that, and there it is. Okay. Creating directories. Right, so I could have stuff. Then I could move h.html into stuff. What I actually want to show though is, for instance, so we can do a couple of different things. So let's say I have, I don't know. Right, so there's the empty foo file. So again, we have our permissions, right? We have the owner, the user that is the owner. We have the owning group, and then we have the file size along with the modification date, right? So you notice that foo is a file of size 0. Basically, there's nothing in it. Okay. Nothing at all. But touch basically is pretty handy for creating a file with a particular name and stuff like that. Suppose I only wanted to see the HTML files in this directory. Easy enough. ls*.html, boom. Notice leaves out foo. Okay. So this is referred to as file name globbing. Okay, and so we can use this. We can use these kinds of wildcards for grabbing particular kinds of stuff. So for instance, if I wanted to move only the HTML files into the stuff folder, I could do this. Right, so move star.html into stuff, and right, notice they're gone from here. If we take a look at stuff, right there it is.
If there isn't a folder called stuff, it will create it, or it will put an error.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If the stuff is not a folder, like we haven't created a folder yet, if we do mv...
Right, so for instance, so if I do mv foo to bar, that basically just renamed the file itself. Okay, so if it's not a folder that I'm moving it to, then in that case it just does a straight up file rename. You can, in addition to using star, you can actually do a couple of other things as well. So you can, for instance, you can use the question mark character to match just a particular, just one letter. So for instance, let's see. So we have, there's bar. So let me do touch, baz, and bat. Right. So there's those. And let me put foo back in here. Right, so then I can say BA question mark, and that matches bar, bat, and baz. And you can do a couple of other things as well. So for instance, I can do things like say, oh, give me, let's say, give me all files starting with either F or B and followed by anything. There's those, etc. How do we get rid of stuff? Okay, so getting rid of stuff, generally we can use the rm command. And so, for instance, in the case of individual files, it's actually fairly easy, right? So I can just do something like rm foo, and boom, foo is gone. Okay. Now, directories are trickier. So, for instance, there is actually a separate rmdir command for removing a directory and so forth, but we can actually use rm. But here's the problem. So notice there's stuff, right? So if I do rmdir, it says, oh, directory's not empty. Now in this case, okay, stuff's only one. There's only files directly in stuff. There's not subdirectories and so forth. So changing into that, removing those files, etc., might not be too difficult. But if I do have various nestings and so forth, and want to get rid of all that, that's going to take a little more work, right? So ways that I can actually do this, typically I can do so. We can use rm. And the tac r basically stands for recursive. Okay, so I can say remove recursively stuff. And so you'll notice now it actually deleted the HTML files, all the contents of stuff, together with the stuff folder itself. Finding out about the commands that you use. Okay, so remember, the Linux philosophy basically is to give you a ton of commands. Okay, there's commands and commands after command. Each command basically is highly specialized. That is, it basically does one thing, and it does that only one thing very, very well. Okay. In terms of sort of finding out about different commands, so one, you could do things like type, right? So notice type ls is alias to that. I could say tell me about cp. cp is basically from there. Similarly, if you want to find out where the command that you're using is from, I could use things like which, right? So which ls is actually being run. Which, let's see, is Python installed on here? No, Python isn't installed on here. Which bash, right? So the bash shell that we're using is the one from /bin/bash. Okay. There is a general help facility. So you can actually do kind of help on those things. We did see man previously for looking up the options of various things. As I said, they're pretty concise, they're pretty technical, but usually it's a good starting point for learning about the particular options that a particular command has, right? So you notice ls, there are a lot of different options that we can use for the lowly ls command. Now, in terms of redirection, so I showed, for instance, I can use things like echo and so forth, but the redirection isn't just isn't limited just to, for instance, the echo command. So, for instance, I could do something like this: ls tac al to. So now, the output of that ls command got dumped into the file named files. There they are. Okay. Now, your redirection, this form of redirection, will overwrite existing information. So you'll notice if I do ls redirected to files, that's all I have. Okay. So I sort of lose that previous information. Now, if you want to extend that or add to that, use double greater than signs. And there it is. You can also use redirection for input. So for instance, I could say for the sort command, let's sort files. Right, so take that, right, so files itself isn't sorted directly, but nevertheless, if I want to see that, that content sorted, I can simply say, okay, redirect files into the sort command and basically have that particular thing sorted up. Okay, and you can mix and match. Like so. Okay, so that's input and output redirection, and so really commonly used with Linux scripting and so forth. Okay. Related is the concept of pipes. So I think I've sort of mentioned this before, right? So for instance, there's the history, right? So this is all the commands that I've typed on this particular instance, right? So this kind of goes back to when we started. Remember, and then if I exit, actually, it will save this. So if I came back, it will continue to have this, and so forth. And so we saw this can actually be pretty handy for doing a number of things, right? So we saw that it's real easy to come in here. If I wanted to run, for instance, this command, I could say, oh, okay, that's number 13. So I can just do exclamation mark 13, and basically reruns that command for me. Okay, but we could also do a number of things. So for instance, I could say pipe the output of history into the less command. Right? And so now I see history itself, but I also get it paginated, right? So I can hit space to kind of move through here. I can use all the features of less to be able to search that, and so forth. Suppose I want to search history, right? So I can say, okay, let's pipe that through grep for every occurrence of ls, and then let's pipe that to back into less. So there's all the places where I used ls. So this idea of piping things basically gives us the ability to very, very easily build up some really complex behavior just by, okay, take this, now run it through this next thing, etc. Right? LSLT basically, you notice, kind of gives us this this kind of directory listing sorted on date and so forth. I could then pipe that, for instance, through head. Now, in this case, it doesn't actually do that much because, well, I only have a few files. But head, remember, takes the top 10 lines from a particular entry. So this is an easy way of getting the top 10 newest files in a particular directory. DU, right, for disk usage. So we can do that. We can pipe that through sort by the space that they consume. Okay. How about finding stuff? So there's a couple of ways of doing that. One, again, so doing this kind of which type of thing for individual commands to know which where that thing lives is helpful. There's a couple of other ones as well. So there's a thing called locate. And locate basically searches there is actually, in fact, to make sure that the database is up to date. Oh yeah, right. Because that has to run as super user. Okay, so updates the database. So locate basically uses the notice there's lots of things with ls there. So that is locate, but locate basically kind of relies on programs when they are installed and so forth as updating the database. If you literally want to scour the disk to search for individual things, then you can use the find command. Okay. So find basically allows you to find individual things. So for instance, let me go here again. So I'll say. Make dir, let's do something like this. Hey, stack. Okay, so the -p option. Notice when I take a look, so there's the hey directory, there's the stack directory. Okay, and then I can do touch hey. Sorry. Hey, stack, needle. It's a needle in a haystack. Okay. Find. So the first parameter is basically where I'm going to search. So dot basically says start searching here, and then I can do things, for instance, like find any file named needle. Oh, there it is. And there's the path to that. Find actually has, find again is one of these nice commands that has tons of options, just so you can kind of see. Right, so there's lots of stuff you can do with find. Let me show you another example. So find dot dash type, okay. So the dash type F basically means find me only files, not directories. And then when I find the file, I'm going to print out the name of the file, so that. And now if I want to know exactly how many files I have, well, I can pipe that to the word count command with the tacl option, which basically tells me count up the lines. Okay. There it is. Questions on any of this stuff? All right, so that should give you, that kind of gives you a good, a reasonable introduction to this. Let's see, the kind of things that I want to. Yeah, I think we're good then. All right. So let's talk about a couple of other stuff. I think I'll come back to this in a bit. All right, so that's running. So we have our Ubuntu instance running in the cloud. Let's talk about actually getting a Windows server up and running. Okay, so just as we can run Linux servers, we can also launch Windows servers. Okay, so here I'll come in, and again, after launch instance, we can go down. So we could actually run Windows Server 2016. I'm gonna grab a 2012 instance. Let's see, down a little bit farther. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, and so I'll go with the base rather than SQL Server. Right, so here it is, Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 base. I'll click select. Okay. Again, it gives me some options for the particular instance type that we're going to use. Right, and again, free tier is nice, saves us money, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do review launch on that. Okay. Now, let's see, a couple of things. So, curiously, actually, let me see. Security group, yes, it does, right? So, the security group that it creates for this, you'll notice, actually uses, basically opens up the RDP port for this, for remote desktop. So if I come down here, again, I'm just going to set that to my IP address so that only I'm allowed to log in, or, well, technically speaking, anybody who's sort of accessing the internet through the same NAT. So we configure, we are going to communicate and connect with the Windows Server using Remote Desktop Protocol. Okay. Nevertheless, you still need a key. Okay, and you'll see why we're going to need the key in a minute. All right, so let me go ahead and click launch. Notice it says, okay, choose an existing key. Here I have my class demo key already selected, and so I acknowledge that I have that, and I'm going to go ahead and have that launched. Okay, so we'll go back over to our list of things, right? Windows Server 2012. Okay, so that's pending, so we'll wait a couple of minutes for that. Okay, it is running, right? So once again, we are going to need the public DNS, but most importantly, we actually need the password for logging into this. Okay, so how do we get the password? That's a little trickier. Okay, so basically, notice if I right-click on here, there's the option for Get Windows Password, right? Which I can open. Oh, it's not available yet. Okay, well, so much for that. Still initializing. Ah, there we go. Okay, so there is this convoluted method for retrieving the password, right? So basically, as I said, you still need to have your key pair for being able to do this, right? So notice it says, okay, to decrypt this, essentially you're going to need your key pair. And so here, essentially, is what it's asking you for is that PEM file. Remember the one that we downloaded and converted to a PPK and then ultimately deleted the PEM file? Yeah. All right, so let me show you how to actually deal with this. So again, I'm going to run puttygen. And I can load up my class demo key, right? And I do have a password set on this, a passphrase set on this, so let me go ahead and enter that. Okay, so we have notice we have a couple of, so here's the public key part, but we actually need, right, you'll notice that we in fact need the private key. Okay, so I can do this a couple of ways. I can either but ultimately I basically need to generate the private key in the appropriate format. So I can come here to save private key. The only issue is that once I do, so I'll show you when I do this. class demo PEM. Actually, no, sorry. I really wanted this. I apologize. Conversion, export, open SSH key. There we are. All right, now we have that. Okay, so I should be able to browse, and I think I dumped it here. Here it is, and I'll click OK, and then I'll click decrypt, right? And notice it says there's an error decrypting. Please ensure that your private key itself is not encrypted, right? So since I still currently have the key phrases listed here, when I actually save the private key or export it, it's coming out as encrypted, which is a problem. Okay, so basically, delete that. Delete that. Okay, so I don't have the passphrase in there. Now I can export that key. Yes, I actually do. Again, we'll save this out. Yes, I want to go ahead and save that. Okay, let me go ahead, load this up now, and do a decrypt. Okay, and now I have my my Windows login information, right? So it says, yeah, we're using the username administrator, and there is there's the password. Okay. So let me run remote desktop, and I will connect to this. Oops. Go away. There. There's that. Let me make sure to select this then. And use another account. Okay, AVM administrator, and paste this in here. And oh, yes, because I don't want. I wonder if, let's see. No, it keeps trying to put me in that. Yeah. How do I keep it from specifying that domain? Okay. Windows. Check this real quick, otherwise it's Okay, I will look that up later then. Yeah, for some reason, it's really wants to keep, yeah, domain's not, okay, domain's not listed, let's see. Administrator, and paste. Oh, did I think I had the wrong, I must have had something else copied in there. What? Okay, that's that. Connect. Nope, now we're back to that. Ah. Well, that was incredibly painful. Right, so there that is, and of course, you know, I can do things like this. Right. So I'm logged into my server in the cloud and so forth, and move around from there. Right. So. Oh. Okay. Fine. Really, since when? Wait. Tried all this yesterday. Worked no problem. All right. Anyways, let's see. Right. So there's server manager, all of those kinds of things. So, questions about this much?
Why isn't the Internet Explorer running?
Sorry.
Why isn't the Internet Explorer running?
It doesn't want me to. It doesn't want me to log in with the default administrator account. So I could create another user account and then log in under that, and that's what it's having an issue with. It looks like it's a security setting. All right. So that gives you a basic idea of how to do that. So one of the questions that I think that brings up, well, what if I want to RDP into my Unix system, my Linux server? Okay. So let me first I'll get rid of Windows, and so since I'm totally done with this, I'm going to click I'll click terminate. So that goes bye-bye. All right. So for connecting into remotely into a Linux system, there's actually a couple of different protocols you can use. One of the most common ones is VNC. Anybody played with that? Yeah, it's okay. It's not half bad. RDP is actually one of the few things that Windows has done right. The protocol actually is pretty responsive and snappy on network connections, and so installing RDP onto Linux is actually a nice handy way of basically accessing that. Okay, so let me actually kind of walk you through some of these things. I do have, let's see. Yep. Okay, so I do actually have a script that basically automates this. And what I'm going to do, I'll sort of go through the different parts of the script. I'm actually going to do it manually just so you can see it, but I also want to kind of show you some other stuff. Okay, so first of all, the windowing interface itself, and just especially for kind of doing anything significant, generally requires a bit more resources than the micro instance is going to give me. So what I actually want to do is I want to change the type of instance that I'm using. Okay. Now I can't do it while it's running, right? So you'll notice if I kind of come into here and there's instance settings, and there is an option for change instance type, but I can't do it while the machine's running. So if I go to instance state and I stop this, okay, it will shut that down for me, which means, yep, that closed as well. Come on. Yes?
Different several instances. So how can I connect to a particular instance in SSH? I should provide some information.
Connect to which in SSH?
To some of the instances. For example, to Ubuntu instances.
Right. So remember, I mean, well, actually, okay. Well, since this is shutting down, hang on. We'll see in a minute. Okay. I'll change it, and then we'll go back to that. Okay. So here's the Ubuntu instance, right? Instance settings, change instance type, right? And so I'm just going to bump this up to the small instance. Okay, click apply, and you'll notice that has taken place. Now I can come over to here and click start. Okay, and we'll wait for that to start up. Terminated instances, right, so while that's doing that, right, so remember, we talked about the difference between stopping versus terminating. So stopping's really great, you know, if you're doing some work, maybe you're working on an assignment and you're not quite done, you can do stop, basically then the server's not running, you don't have to worry about accruing charges that way, but you can always come back, restart it, and continue on with your work. When you're totally done with an instance, you can terminate it like I did with the Windows instance. It will appear in your list for some short while, possibly up to 24 hours. Like actually yesterday afternoon, I probably had about 5 or 6 instances that I terminated. So now they're gone. Okay, but it will appear there for a little bit. But once it says it's terminated, it's gone. You don't have to worry about that. Oh, am I accruing charges, etc. It really is gone. Okay, back to so your question was how do you connect to via SSH to the server?
No, it's like if I go to in configuration, I could specify 2 instances.
So if you created 2 instances, and then how do you decide? How do you connect to both of them, or which one, and all of that? Yes.
As I understand, it's like public DNS would be the same for 2.
No, it won't. Right. So if I spun up, so your question is right. If I have another instance, will the public DNS be the same? It will not. Right. So for instance, here I have this particular one. In fact, just to illustrate that, I'll actually spin up one while we're kind of talking. There's that. Let's throw it in the right security group. Sure, it's got that stuff, and I don't even care. I'm not even going to bother specifying user data. We'll just go with that because I just want to fire up another one. Okay. So just a reminder, when you go through that screen, when you click on the link like I did, it's only showing you, it puts in the filter here. So if you click that to get rid of it, now you'll actually see all of your instances. Okay, so there's the dummy that I created. All right, so notice EC2, so it's 156.108 versus 156.9.
Yeah, but it's like different launches of the instances. If you, on the configuration, you can provide number of instances. Like,
Right, you can.
it's like it will be two different
And they will, and so right, so if I spun up 3 instances, let's do it. Right, so if I spin these up,
It's like those instances, they are not behind load balancer, as I understand.
there's no load balancer. No, by default, what all we're doing here is creating the instances, right? The setting up the load balancing is a separate step with this. Okay. All right. So that can go away now. Okay, terminate that. Cool. All right. So here's this thing, and let me go ahead and grab that. And so we'll go over to Putty. Paste that in. Okay, so we're back onto our Linux server. All right, so for setting up the RDP, right? So here's that script that I was talking about. So this script, the first thing that it actually does is it creates a shell variable called RDP user that's named that's set to the value RDP user. Basically, the issue is this. When we use RDP to log in, we need to have an account that has a password. Our root account doesn't have a password because it's set up that way to only use SSH keys. So we basically create a separate user that we will only use for logging in through RDP. And so that's basically what's happening there. This initial stuff here is basically the same stuff that happens with the other one, basically fixing the dir color, setting the time zone, etc. Here I'm just printing out some information. I'll come back to this one in a minute. Let's actually do so the actual install stuff is basically this right here. Okay, so this is the command that's going to install the stuff. So you notice we're going to install XRDP, XFCE4, and XFCE4 terminal. So I'm just going to grab all this and copy that, and I will paste that into here. Okay. The TAC-Y option just means if it asks a question, it will just automatically hit yes. Right. So you'll notice. So it runs. Takes a little bit because this is kind of installing a bunch of stuff. Right, and while that's doing that, I'll just give you also give you an example of the script doing its thing automatically. And just to show you, so I'm going to go here. So for that user, I'll create it as Dr. V. Okay, so all that is good. I will have to make one change to something in a minute. Great. Okay, let's check on our install. Yeah, cool. Okay, so it installed the software for us. So we're at the first parts of basically being able to create this. Now, it's a couple of things that we need to do. So one is we need to create the RDP user itself. Okay, that's what this stuff is here. So you see, it says grab this, and then I'll just modify it accordingly. The $sign basically means get the value of that particular variable. Since I'm not doing it from the script, I'm basically doing it. So here I'm saying create a user called RDP user, and I don't have any sort of information about that particular user. So that user is basically added. Now, if I take a look at the parent directory of where I am, notice there's an RDP user directory for us. Basically, that's that person's home directory. Okay, I'm also going to add that person to the allowable list of users who can use the super user privileges, like so. Okay. So now that that individual can do that. Now let me go up to that place. So tilde I can actually do. Right, notice I'm here. So now what I need to actually do is create a file with some particular information for how to set up or how to start the windowing session. Right. So basically, I want this. Actually, I'll do it this way. So X session is the special name of the file, and then basically what I need to do is tell it to use XFCE. That's going to be our window manager for that. Okay. Now the only problem that we have is notice that the .x session file that I just created is owned by root, not by RDP user. Okay, so we need to fix that. So I can do a chown to say RDP user RDP user and .x session, and that's going to die a horrible death. Right? Because, well, I have to run that with super user privileges. Sudo it. Up arrow, up arrow, up arrow. Right? Now we have the X session file created. Okay. All right. So now that that's created, let me actually go. So one other thing is my security group. Which is here, does not have a does not have a rule to allow RDP in. Okay, so I can edit that. I could also actually tunnel that through SSH, and I'll probably show that another time. But for right now, let me just go ahead and add in the rule for RDP, and again set that there. Okay, so there I've modified the security group so that now I should be able to use Windows RDP to connect to that. All right, let's try it. Actually, let me grab the. Okay, oh, wait, yeah, there we are. Okay, so this is what that looks like, and so it's asking for the username. This is basically, right, so remember I was setting it for RDP user. Oh, yeah, sorry, this is not gonna work just yet. It's not going to work because I need to actually set the password for the RDP user. So that is, yeah, sudo passwd. Cool. Okay. So I can set a password like so. Now, use that password. First time, click use default config, and there's my windowing system. Okay. Now, so right now actually it doesn't have a web browser installed, but I could install that. So for instance, if I come here and let's do, let me make this a little bit bigger. So right. So there's the IP address of that server. Okay. Now, that's kind of that's sort of the manual process. Let me show you what that looks like from the other one. Right. So you'll recall I set up this other one basically just running the script. So we can take a look there. Let me go to. Okay. So again, when you run the script, you're still going to ultimately have to set a password for the RDP user. So you are going to need to first log in through something like SSH, namely PuTTY, to do that. Okay. Now, what's nice is that script actually gives you a bunch of information right here as the message of the day. Okay, so first of all, notice it tells you, make sure to set the password of whatever the RDP user was, in this case Dr. V, using this. So I'm going to run that command first. It asks me for a password, just like before. Okay, and we're good. Now I can come in and grab this. Wait. Fine, let's do this. Paste. DRV and the password that I just created. Right. And voila. The other thing that is listed there, it turns out there's sort of a bug / feature in the console here. So the issue is, let me make this bigger. The issue is that that tab completion does not work in the terminal in this environment. Okay, so the way that you basically fix that is, let's see if I can remember this offhand. So I'm going to go, and this is what that, right? You'll see the stuff in PuTTY basically, right? So to fix tab completion in that, go to Applications, Settings, Window Manager, go to the Keyboard tab, clear that, right? So it looks like this. So if I do Applications, Settings, and Window Manager, then I'm going to go to Keyboard here, and the switch window for that. So when I clear that out, now actually I will have tab completion, right, and so forth. Okay. So you can end up having a, so if you so desire, you can actually use a graphical user interface and use RDP to connect to your server online. Okay. Questions about that much? Okay. Like most things, now that we got 9 minutes. Cool. All right. So let's see if I can break it. All right. So I'm going to go over. Remember, so the part of the issue is that RDP doesn't have encryption built in. So you can actually decide to tunnel that using SSH. So that is what I can do here is I can come back over to the RDP rule, and I'm going to delete that. Right. So now I don't have the ability to connect directly to RDP. Okay. Now, hopefully, I can do this from memory because I always kind of screw it up. Well, I guess we'll see. So first of all, right, notice now when I try to connect to the server, it ain't gonna happen, right? Eventually, this will time out basically because the security group is doing what it's supposed to do. All right. So what I can do then is I can come to here. Oops, sorry. Actually, I want. Run PuTTY. I'm actually going to disconnect there. Okay, so let me go ahead and load up my session for this. So I'm going to come down to SSH, and I want tunnels. All right, so this is, let's see. I think it's 3389. That's what I thought. Okay, let's see. So destination 3389, source port 3391, I believe is how I do it. We'll see in a minute. There's something else I need to add here, I think, and that's where it's going to have. Yeah, I'm going to have to look that up. Do I have an example of that here? Maybe. It says it's a tunnel, and there's no tunnels. Okay. All right, I will look that one up. Okay. So that's it for today, and I will see you next class. If you haven't already gotten your Amazon stuff set up, do set that up, because next class basically is going to kind of be a lab thing, and you'll be able to do a lot of the stuff that we're doing, and we'll be here to help you. So, yeah.